Hi, this is Mr. Den, and I'm going to tell you the part two of the powers of Congress, specifically about how Congress passes laws. In other words, how a bill becomes a law. But this is the detailed version. So, if you remember our political spectrum line, we're going to do the same thing with how a bill becomes a law. Here are all the components that we're going to be responsible for. You can see it's pretty detailed, so you're going to want to have your notebook out, and you can pause this screencast-o-matic and write these things in on your political spectrum as you go. So here we go. Let's dig in. First of all, you can see the blue line down the middle of the smartboard from left to right, showing the flow from the beginning to end of how a bill becomes a law. On the top of the line is the House of Representatives, and you can see on the bottom, so on the top, and on the bottom of the line, you have the Senate. So let's get started. In the House of Representatives, a bill gets started by a congressperson drafting a bill, assigning it, and then putting it into a wooden box. It's called the hopper. That's how you introduce a bill in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, a senator drafts a bill and is recognized by the president and stands up in front of his fellow senators and introduces the bill orally. He reads the bill. Once the bill is introduced, it's assigned to committee in different ways. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House assigns the bill to a standing committee. And in the Senate, the Majority Leader assigns the bill to a standing committee. And this is very important because they're going to want to have control of those committees, because oftentimes the bill will never, what happens to a bill really is very dependent upon what happens to it in committee. Now, the standing committees that we're talking about are the ones that we learned about in part one. Might be the Agriculture Committee or the Education Committee or something like that. Okay. Now, those big committees oftentimes will assign those bills to subcommittees. So the House to their subcommittee and the Senate to their subcommittee. Okay. Now, one committee that's a standing committee, but only in the House of Representatives, is the House Ways and Means Committee. That committee is where all tax bills start. Tax bills cannot start in the Senate. They have to start in the House, and they'll go to the House Ways and Means Committee. Now, what happens when it goes to subcommittee will really determine a lot of times what happens to the bill. There's a few things that can happen. The first thing is it can just be reported on unfavorably. They don't like the bill. Okay? It's no good. It just dies. Or the chairperson of the committee can pigeonhole the bill. And that simply means that the committee is going to ignore it. They're not even going to talk about it. But in either case, when that happens, either reporting unfavorably or pigeonholing, that bill dies right there. Now, it's possible that they could make some amendments to the bill, and that's called markup. They might add some riders or some amendments, or something could happen to change that bill right from the very beginning, either in the House or the Senate. Move this down just a little bit. Okay, make room for it. Now, if they do like the bill, even if they amend it or do something different to it, they might decide to report on that bill favorably. And if that happens, we'll put that right there, then the bill would then go to the floor. Now, what happens in the House of Representatives is they have a unique committee, and it's called the Rules Committee. And if that bill is reported on favorably, it goes to the Rules Committee, and they'll assign debate limits and some rules to that bill. And because they assign debate limits, that means that a filibuster can't happen in the House of Representatives. On the Senate side, however, there is no limit on debates, so they can add riders to the bill, or excuse me, they can filibuster the bill, which means that they can vote for a delay of the bill. I shouldn't say vote for a delay. The minority party can delay the bill. In other words, they'll stall and hold the floor of the Senate so that it can't be debated by both sides, effectively making it impossible to move forward on any work for the Senate. This doesn't happen a lot, but it's a very effective way for the minority party to stop a bill. Now, one of the things that the Senate can do, if they have enough votes, is they can stop the filibuster with a vote of cloture. And a vote of cloture takes 60 votes, which is pretty hard to get. But if they can get 60 votes, they can stop the filibuster. The other thing that they could do is they can add riders, but so can the House of Representatives. But there's a difference. On the House of Representatives side, the riders that they add must be germane to the bill. In other words, they have to have something to do with the bill. So if you had a bill on railroad crossings, you had to have a rider about railroad crossings. But on the Senate side, those riders can be about anything. Has nothing to do with the bill. So a railroad crossing bill might have a rider attached that had to do with a bridge or subsidies for housing or who knows what, which adds what they call pork barrel, which is like extra stuff that has nothing to do with the original bill, but is usually added to convince a senator to give that senator some extra advantage for their state so that they'll vote for it. It's a tactic to get somebody to pass that bill. Now, if the bills make it through the House and Senate, if there's any differences between those bills, they have to be resolved by that conference committee. And they can hammer out the differences so they have one similar bill from both the House and the Senate. And if they have to make something and change it, it'll have to go back through both House and the Senate and get passed again. And if it does that, it will then go to the president. So you can see that a lot of things happen that could really derail that bill from becoming a law. Now, when it gets to the president, a few things can happen. The president can sign the bill into law, and then it's a law, or which passes the bill. Okay. The president can also ignore the bill. If the president ignores the bill, and there's less than 10 days left in the session of Congress, and Congress adjourns, they call that a pocket veto because nothing happens to the bill. The president didn't do anything with it. And in that case, the bill dies. If the president ignores the bill and there's more than 10 days left, then it becomes a law automatically. And the last thing the president can do, obviously, is the veto, which is the president's attempt to kill the bill. Now, if it can go back to the House and to the Senate, and if it gets vetoed, if they can get 2/3 of a vote, they can override the president's veto, but it doesn't happen very often. So, if it can get through all of this difficulty, get to the president, and he either signs it or lets it go into law on his own, or if it gets overridden, if his veto gets overridden by Congress, it becomes a law. And we all know this oldie but goodie, and it's pretty accurate.
You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long week while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill, and if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president. Today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're sold.
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed you, Bill. Now you're a law. Oh, yes.
So make sure that you have this flow chart, so to speak, in your notebook so that you can reference it to watch and learn how a bill starts and goes through the process to become a law. You can watch this multiple times, do what you need to do to get this captured, and good luck.